new beginning.
Welcome to the Grief Dreams podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in again. We always love that people are listening. It brings us joy. I know the guests that come on, they get joy from being able to share their story and to be able to know people are listening. I think it's amazing. And it's amazing that there is this need for people or desire for people to learn more about other people in their life journeys and also their grief dreams. So we're going to begin. Today is just me, actually, Dr. Joshua Black. On the podcast. Sean Ram is unavailable, so we're going solo. So hope you guys enjoy enjoy this. So today we have Brent Birkhoff, who is an accomplished professional spending 40 years in managerial and executive positions before turning his attention to hospice. He received his Master's of Science from Marian University in Thanatology and is certified in Thanatology from the Association of Death Education and Counseling. He and his wife, Tina, recently started Heartstrings by Legacy Leaders, which is dedicated to ensuring that all individuals have their story told before death. And you can find that at heartstringsmemories.com. Additionally, we have Tina here, which is great. And she is an artist whose work has been displayed in several galleries across Midwest, Arizona, and online. And you can find more about her at tinamariegallery.org. All right. Hi, guys. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having us. We're very excited.
Good morning.
Good morning. So, Brent, we actually met, I want to say, what is it, 2 years ago, maybe 3 now, back at the International Death, Grief, and Bereavement Conference. And I got to say, I really enjoyed talking with you. I got to spend a lot of time with you. And you invited me into your circle of peers that you had there and your table. And I want to sort of thank you for that because it was such a warm invite and I had such a fun time going there and then presenting and then hanging out afterwards in all the different places in La Crosse. So, I'm curious to ask a little bit about that because you're presenting this year, which is coming up on June 3rd to 5th. And I just want to see if you talk about your experience at the conference, because for how long have you been going there so far?
I've probably been going for about 3 or 4 years now, and it's been an amazing event every year. In fact, I actually go 1 to 2 days earlier because of the networking that I can do at that event with the people that you're talking about. I mean, there's just really high quality people that are accomplished in their professions and actually not only lead you, but take you by the hand and teach you and mentor and coach you in whatever step and journey in your life you're at. So I actually go early and I stay late.
That's nice. And now you're not a student anymore. So you got some qualifications behind your name, which is great. Cause I know you're pretty stressed when you were there because you had so many papers to write.
I think we both know that very well as you were going for your doctorate at the time I met you. And, you presented the year I met you and did an amazing job. And I remember bringing all of my friends and family to that presentation.
Yeah, that was great. It was a great turnout. And I love how there was so much support there for the research that I was doing and the talk in general. And that, it boosted my mood and allowed me to sort of see that, this is even like in the grief field, this is something people want to know more about. And it's like you're one of the supporters. So thank you so much for doing that. So what got you to want to do a talk this year?
Well, actually, this year's conference is all about hospice. And so one of the things that I've done in my career is I spent 6 years volunteering for hospice in Jefferson, Wisconsin. And it really touched my heart that the topic this year was on hospice. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to bring the talents that I had to the group for the first time as a speaker rather than just as a participant.
Yeah, it's got to be so exciting. Are you a little nervous for that or what?
I'm terribly nervous for that.
Well, all your peers, right? You've been there 4 years. You've gained a lot of networking skills and you met a lot of people and they're probably going to show up so that you've set a high bar.
Okay, now I'm even more nervous.
That's funny. And so what's your topic on this year that you're going to do?
I'm actually talking about dignity therapy, which is a protocol that was developed by a doctor, Dr. Harvey Max Chachinov in Winnipeg, Canada. So for all of you Canadians there, right in your country. And what dignity therapy is a set standard and protocol to document people's life journey and their life story. And what's neat about it is that it's not only credible, but it's valid. And throughout his research, and throughout the research throughout the world on dignity therapy, it's proven as valid and credible throughout the world. So the protocol is a standard by which we actually use with what we call Heartstrings, which is the document that we provide. And it's based on that standard that he created, that we can provide that to our patients as well.
Well, that's amazing. I'm sad I won't be there this year. I hope to go probably the next year if I can. But yeah, it's gonna be a good one. I think I'd love to learn more about that too, and I'm glad you're on the podcast because we can we can learn more about it. So that's it's really good. And I want to sort of also shout out too that one of the keynotes was a guest that we had on, Reverend Andrew Vitale, from episode 72. So I know you know him very well, and he's doing a keynote piece, which it's going to be really good too, because I haven't heard him speak, because when I was there, he was doing a talk the same time my talk was, so I never actually got a chance to see him. But I'm glad he's doing a keynote. That should be a fun one. And I'm guessing it's on meditation. Let's see. Harmony requires the right spacing. The same is true for life. Resonate with a grateful heart. So it's on gratitude.
Andrew's a very dear friend of mine, and I can't be happier for him to have this opportunity. He's actually been part of the International Death, Grief, and Bereavement Conference for many years, sitting on their board, and it's time that he presents as a keynote, and I'm very happy for him.
Yeah, that's going to be a good one. So yeah, if you can get out there, folks, check it out. And it's not just for people who work with the bereaved, but it's also for the bereaved themselves. Would you agree?
I would agree. And this year's topic is hospice and the arts, coping with dying and grief. And as you know, my philosophy, even though I studied Thanatology, which is death, dying, grief, and bereavement, I really think that death is all about living in life. And that's what I bring to the people that we serve.
That's good. So I think this is a great transition to actually talk about what you're doing now. So you started the business with Tina. Let's get Tina on here. Tina, you there?
I'm here.
All right. So how did did you inspire him to decide to make this new company?
Sure. I think Brent, since he was, I don't know the phrase, knee high to a grasshopper, since he was little, the senior citizens and those that are more staged in life has been his favorites. His grandparents, great-grandparents, he's always gravitated to the elderly. When he started volunteering at hospice, it was something that was just a tremendous passion. He would go vigils in the middle of the night every Sunday for, caring for someone whose family went off to church. He loved it. And I encouraged him maybe to look at doing this as a career, and he went into thanatology and got his master's. And it just flowed. And he absolutely loved being with the elderly, hearing their stories. We're not just about an autobiography. We're about their life, their passions, what lights them up, what sets them on fire when they think about things, so that family members can know that person to the core instead of just, when they graduated high school and when they got their first job. And that's nice, but who are they? And Brent digs into that and just loves it.
Oh, that's so interesting. And so does he do the same approach to you? Does he know you that well also?
Probably. Yes, I am sure he does.
That's really cool. So what's it been like, I guess, working together? Because I'm guessing this might be one of your first ventures together.
It is. And until this point, we both looked at each other and said, oh, no. We are both type A personalities. We're both detail orientated. I'm more on the artistic side. He's more on the analytical side. And the two of them together are oil and water. But with this, it is so creative. He can be the analytical and get the details down. And I end up putting in a little bit of flair of the artistic, and pulling out from people things that maybe they hadn't thought of before. So it has been just a real joy to be able to work together.
That's amazing. And so what exactly is Heartstrings? So you're talking about, providing people with their stories that they've shared and who they were. So what goes into that?
Well, we're actually not just creating memories. We're actually capturing the very essence of a person, their dialect, mannerisms, and personality. And through the protocol of dignity therapy, what we do is we go in initially and have a half an hour meeting with people and explain what we're going to do and similar questions that we may ask, give them some sample questions, and do an informed consent. And then we come back within 3 days. And we give about 10 to 15 minutes of prep to get ready for that. And then we do a 1 hour audio tape with me asking questions and then leading them into the journey of what was the most important things in their life. So we capture their lifetimes of hopes, their dreams, their aspirations, and then also any lessons learned or lessons for their loved ones. And then after that hour, then we take that back and we do many, many hours, sometimes 10 to 15 hours of editing after it's transcribed, so that when we bring it back to the individual, it reads as a story, not as an interview process. And we actually read it to them. And they have the opportunity to say, ooh, I shouldn't have said that about my brother. I better change that in the document. Or I forgot to say something about my cousin who was really special to me. So can I add that? And so we add that. And then we take it back and we finalize that document. And then we provide them not only paper documents, but we also obtain about 25 photographs. And we insert those into the document and then provide them a little bit later in time a document that's hardcovered with their 25 pictures in it amidst their story.
Oh, that's interesting. That's really interesting. And I like too how you record it. So basically you're doing a podcast and then you're turning it into a book.
I guess that's true.
Yeah. Hey, maybe you should think about that. Heartstrings, the podcast. So I think that's a really interesting idea of capturing your stuff and then making a hard copy so people can then look at it. What have you experienced so far when it comes to the family's reaction and also the person who is dying, their reaction?
Well, I think what's really important is to remember that not all stories are good. Not all stories leave us with positive feelings, and not all lifetimes and journeys that we venture on are positive. So there's good, there's bad, and then there's neutral stories. So what's important is what's important to that individual and that patient. But I think that, as we get older and we age further along, we have more and more of a desire as human beings to make sense of the world around us, to find our place in it, to know that our lives are meaningful, and then to pass on those lessons to the next generation. And so that's really what we're doing. There was a woman by the name of Ellen Supa who said, I don't think I've done anything extraordinary with my life, but it's ordinary people we are that our loved ones want to know after we're gone. And I think that's the important thing that we have to remember. We hear a lot of times from people, oh, my kids wouldn't care about my story, or nobody cares about me. But really what the family wants is they want the history and the documentation of those stories. And there's some stories that come out that the children may never even known about. But what's also important is that many times we hear from people who have already lost a loved one that they wanted more than anything else to have had this opportunity to capture that legacy document for their mother or for their father who's now passed. And they're left with pieces of stories that they don't remember the other part, or they wish that it was documented. And I hear over and over again, well, I really wish I had that for so-and-so, for my mom or for my dad.
Yeah, like I think I'm looking back at my father's life, and he died suddenly, so wasn't one of those things that you could a little plan for. But yeah, I would love to hear more of his perspective on stuff, because it was only after he died that I started wondering even more so about how he was raised, and what were his positive childhood memories, or the things that made him laugh and smile, because I always saw him as a dad. I didn't really get a chance to see him really as, a whole being, I guess, right? Like he only started in my life when he was like, what, 30 or something, right? So that's sort of what I knew him as. But like all those other years, I'm trying to like piece those back together from talking with my grandma and talking with my mom. And so to have like a document like that would be, a pretty beautiful thing to have. And so do you find that it's only people who are like dying, like in a hospice setting kind of thing, that are eager to do this? Or is this something anyone can do in their spare time? Because the reality is that we don't always know when we're going to die.
That's a great question. We actually enjoy focusing on people that have passed over their working part of their life. So usually people that are over 60, 65, generations prior to getting to that age. It's all about living. It's all about making a life for yourself. But when you get up to that age, you start to realize there is an end. The end is inevitable. Until about 60, 65, our thought process isn't looking at what am I going to leave? It's looking at what am I going to do? So we are very interested in the what will I leave? And like you said, pieces. It's almost like a puzzle. Generations prior to us have left puzzle pieces. And if we lay them out and make the whole picture, all of a sudden our life seems very valid. Oh my goodness, I'm continuing a passion. My grandfather worked in mines in Ohio for years. And he met my grandmother at a fair, and she lived in Illinois. And he would drive his beat-up old truck all the way to Aurora, Illinois, get on a train and take the train to DeKalb, Illinois, and then get off and get picked up because he never wanted her family to know how beat up his old truck was. Well, what was the passion behind why he left Ohio and moved to Illinois? Was it his love of the earth? Was it he became a farmer? I am passionate about gardening and farming. And if that was part of what he left for me, how wonderful is that? But I will never know because he's now gone. So those puzzle pieces, like you said, are gone. But if we can talk to those that are over 65, those puzzle pieces start to lay down and make a beautiful picture of why we are all family together and what we're doing for each other, whether we're here or gone, and leave a document such as this so that we can further the generations to go ahead and keep forging ahead.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting, just the concept of it, because I can only imagine too, the person who's dying probably hasn't really put all those pieces together themselves. It's like they're aspects of themselves, but the book allows them to sort of look at their whole life as a whole, and that in itself was probably very therapeutic.
Absolutely. One of the patterns that we've seen when we do a document like this, we've had two different outcomes. Well, there's three, but the third one's not as common. The first one, we will go in, we'll read it to them. Normally they cry because it's so touching to them to be able to see all the good that came out of their life and the challenges weren't for naught. And typically we see them do two things. One, they pass away almost the next day and the family's at complete peace and they understand that they were at peace. Or we find the person ends up living for another 3 months, 6 months, a year, and then they can heal some of the wounds that maybe had happened in their life with family members as they go along because they didn't really see it before until they lay it out in this document and go, oh, there is some healing to be done. And they end up healing the past, they end up healing with relatives, and everything becomes so peaceful.
When you're interviewing these people, do they ever mention anything about their own dreams or visions that they have? We just had a guest on, Dr. Pay Grant, and she works at Buffalo Hospice. And so that's one of the research questions they look at is about the dreams and visions of the dying. So has that ever come up when you were, asking these questions?
It does. It does. And, everybody's left with questions on that, which I think is why your research and the work that you're doing, Joshua, is so important for not only Canada and the United States, but really the entire world. Because when people are doing research of yours, similar to yours in different areas, you find that people are really the same throughout the whole world, no matter what culture that they are raised in and what nationality that they have. And so we're finding the same thing. We're finding that people's dreams and their their experience with grief is something that, they may struggle with for a long time and not really recognize or understand why those dreams come or what it means to them in their life.
Yeah, that's the big question, right? To try to provide more education on the topic so the people can freely share and ask questions on it. Because the last thing they want to do is worry anyone around them about what's going on. And so I'm glad most of these dreams, it seems just like in bereavement, a lot of these dreams at end of life tend to be very positive too and comforting. So it seems that there is something that's also helping themselves out, like these dreams and these visions, to also make sense of the transition process and what's going on, but also maybe even said like make amends for some of the stuff that maybe they have regrets over, can help heal some past wounds. And that's sort of like what you guys are doing with just the opposite, in the sense of this is more like waking life and you're trying to pull out some of the stuff, and just by doing that you're allowing them to see maybe some stuff that they still need to work on, or to say some last words to some people, but to just see their life as a whole, and hopefully they can be proud of who they've turned into at the moment of passing, at their passing.
I think that's true, and you use the word worry, that people worry about the dreams that they're having, but I also think there's an extra piece to that, is that we all want to feel like we're normal, and when that happens to us, we start to question, why is this happening and what does it mean, and it's part of that worry piece, but it's also the part of us wanting to know that we're normal, and that in humanity there are other people that are experiencing the same thing as we do.
So what's one of the best questions you ask that tends to get them to really ponder on in their life?
I always ask people, what is the most important thing that has happened to you throughout your life? And usually I don't get a short answer. Usually I get a long answer. And what's interesting about the answer to that, it always goes back to relationships. It always goes back to the people that we've had a relationship with that went well, or that we've hurt in certain ways. And what we want to do towards the end of our life is we want to not only heal ourselves, but we want to heal those relationships that surrounded us and were most important to us. And you hear a lot of times in hospice that people will not die until all the pieces are taken care of that they need to do on this earth. And many times they'll wait 2 or 3 days to die so that a relative that's most important or estranged that maybe lives in California and they're in Wisconsin comes back to stand next to their bedside and to talk to them one last time, and then they'll be at peace, and then they can die.
Yeah, I heard that too, and I also heard too, like sometimes it's almost like this, they wait till everyone clears the room so no one sees them die, which is another interesting tidbit. I'm like, oh, it's so interesting. I wonder if you do control a little bit on when you die, in the sense of the timing of who's in the room and who's not.
Based on all my years in hospice, I can tell you that people have complete control of that.
Wow. That's wild. That's so wild. All right. So I want to ask you the question you asked them, which is, so Brent, what is the most important thing that's happened to you in your life at this point?
Meeting my wife and having children, to be honest with you.
Good answer. She's right there. All right, Tina, is that true for you too?
It probably is very true. I've had a couple of experiences in my life that normal people don't get the experience to have. I've had a couple health issues that put me at the edge of death. So I have seen things a little differently than a normal mid-50s person would see. So I think that has allowed me to have a deeper understanding of what a true relationship needs to be, honest-wise, whether it's a positive or negative statement. It has, I find myself being much more honest and open, which I think has helped Brent to be able to listen to the stories that he hears with a much more open and honest ear and a vantage point to ask the questions. We don't live in utopia, and sometimes our experiences bring a little bit of pain in order for us to be able to see where the love is coming from. So, yes, marrying Brent was definitely a big part of my life, and I've been able to utilize my experiences to make us much stronger.
That's very sweet. And so you mentioned that you had an illness that really changed your perspective. So what was that?
Yeah, I've had a couple of them. When I was 32 years old and I had babies on the ground here, I actually had a subdural hematoma, so I had brain bleeding, and they called it spontaneous. That nearly took my life. They told Brent to go home and prepare because they didn't think I'd make it, and I did, obviously. And then about 7 years ago, I had a scare with breast cancer, and last year I have had a scare with uterine cancer. So some reason or another, I have death knocking at the door, but he keeps walking away, and I'm okay with that.
Wow, that's a lot. And so the two forms of different cancers. I think, like what was that process like for you to go through that, knowing just the word itself is enough to scare people and to think that, this is the end?
You know what? I guess my first experience with a subdural hematoma allowed me to accept life and death. So it doesn't, for me, it's got a little bit of different take to it. I'm ready. I'm hoping I don't go soon, but if I do go, I know I've loved on my grandbabies, I've loved on my husband, I've loved on my kids. I've left them with the best that I can of myself. And if it happens, it happens, and I go. And I figure my values and beliefs say that I can watch them from the other side of the veil, and that's okay with me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's beautiful that, as you said, like you've let go of, that the idea that you're not going to die, and you made amends with that. And you've done so much now to allow yourself to almost have a more freeing life, or a lightness to life, that you're not running from death anymore. It's just like, I've done everything I needed to do, and everything else is now like a bonus. So I think that's amazing that your mindset has changed so much. Are you prepared if Brent ever died before you?
Yeah, like I said, the value of my life just moves forward in how much love I can give and how much love I can receive. And if I'm done receiving that from my husband on this earth, I know that he'll be on the other side giving it just as well. Mm-hmm. Humanly, yes, I will miss him greatly, but spiritually, I'll know that he's there with me all the time. So, for me, I guess some people would say that that's kind of a Pollyanna way of looking at it, but to my core, I believe that. So it's much more accepting.
Yeah, I can only imagine how much like that supports you so much in healing and feeling better just about living life, because the opposite of that is very scary. And so, at the end, I think what you're doing is beautiful, in the sense of, it's keeping you more loving in this world, and it allows you to spread that love as you go. So, man, good for you for, keeping those beliefs in those trying times, and to also continue to grow, so that, you can be the best person you can be with your time left here.
Right. The human world is so fleeting that, if you spend it doing anything else but loving on people, you're wasting your time.
That's funny. All right, Brent, same question for you. Have you really pondered your own death, seeing that your wife was, near death?
I actually ponder my death because of the work that I do on a daily basis. When I'm sitting in front of a person and they may only have a day or 6 months to live, it invokes inside yourself what happens if you only have a day to live, or you only have 6 months to live. And so I think it really changes you in terms of how you have an outlook on life, and what you do on your daily basis and your walk through life, and what's important. And, I was in management for 40 years, working 88 hours a week and traveling throughout the country and internationally. And I realized that wasn't the life that I wanted to continue living, that I wanted to slow down. I wanted to spend more time developing the relationships that were around me, and to start giving to the world in a much different way. And I think that's really what changed me, and put me into a Thanatology program, and now puts me where I am today.
Wow, that's super cool. And I think it's amazing. You said, like, just sitting with the dying has helped you so much, but you also found the stress of living that lifestyle. And it's about, taking the time you have left now and making it meaningful, and providing that legacy that you want to create as you move forward in this life. So I think it's great, the work you both are doing, and how you're trying to help people put together their lives in the last stages of it, and to help family members to know more and not have regrets or wonders. It's all going to be like right there. So I'm really happy for you guys and wish you all the best as you continue to promote the business and work with those who are dying.
No, we appreciate it. We've expanded, and we do now love letters for people. We document letters from war. We also do veteran stories. So, there's a lot of ways that you can find us at heartstringsmemories.com and Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram. But most importantly, we're here if you need us. We go nationwide. So we're ready to go to Canada once you call. And, we'll go all over the world just to help people to document their stories, because we think that most importantly, we don't want one person's story left untold.
Have you ever thought about capturing video of them saying certain things to certain people? Because I know my friend, her father had an illness and then died, but he left every kid a tape of them saying something to them. And she gets great comfort into holding that, because first you could see them again, but you also can hear their voice again. I know that's one of the beauties of these dreams people have at end of life, or not even end of life, just in bereavement, because they get to hear the voice of their loved one again, and you get to see them. And so there's the letter part, is like you get to read it, but have you ever thought about also doing video or adding that in?
We have. It's actually not part of the dignity therapy protocol, and the reason is most people that are in hospice at the end of their life don't want to be remembered in that way, both visually and orally. There's a lot of different ways that you can do legacy for a family member. You can, put together your family history or a family tree, or donate to a charity or a cause, or dedicate a park bench, or write letters. There's a lot of different ways, but we like this protocol because it really gets at the essence of who the person was, and their personality and their dialect and their mannerisms.
That's cool.
Back when we were talking about the fear factor of dying, that what you're talking about is perfect for people that are either newly diagnosed with a cancer that they say, you're not going to make it 2 years. It's really great for people that know that the end of their life may come within 10 or 20 years, and do the video. But we as a country are reactionary, so we don't think about that prior to the situation happening. So the person passes, and then everybody says, oh, I wish I had. And the person gets cancer, and they all say, well, I'm going to beat this, and I'm not going to die. And they get to the point, either elderly or sick, where they don't want people to see them as they are. It's a very rare moment where you find somebody who will embrace that and actually do videos for people before they actually come to the end, where they don't want people to see them or hear them. So it's been an interesting twist. We would like to be able to do that, but until we can start to see life as a journey to live instead of a fear of dying, that's going to be a difficult hurdle.
Yeah, I never thought about that. That's interesting. It's very interesting. All right, let's moving forward to our next sort of transition or part is sort of loss. And so I know you guys sit with the dying all the time, but have you suffered any major losses in your life? So Brent, we'll talk with you first.
I actually have had a lot of loss in my life. When I was just graduated out of college, I lost my grandmother on my mother's side, so my maternal grandmother, and that was probably the hardest thing that I've ever gone through in my whole life. She was very, very dear to me. Excuse me. We spent a lot of time together, and her loss was just extraordinary in my life. And then a number of years later, my grandfather had died. Since then, within the last 6 years, I actually lost one of my brothers. I lost my mother, and then I lost my father. So there's been a lot of loss, and in none of those situations did I ever have their stories documented.
Wow, that's a lot of loss. Wow, that's rough, man. How did you find working through all that? Because that's like majority of your family there.
I do a lot of prayer, to be honest with you.
And so what kind of questions do you have now that you wish you maybe would have asked back then?
Well, the questions through this protocol, I think, are the questions that I wish I would have asked my grandparents and my parents, and my brother, and documented their life stories so that I could have had them. But, knowing what I know now and losing out on that opportunity to do that with them, I'm totally passionate about doing it for other people. And so that's why, I'll travel throughout the world to make sure that somebody's life story is documented so they can pass it down to the next generation.
Was there anything surprising in your grief journey that maybe you didn't expect when it first happened?
Grief is an interesting thing that everybody tries to put a timeline on grief. And sometimes for many people, grief lasts the rest of their lives. So that, I can say that, 40 years ago, I lost my grandmother. But really, it's something that's still with me today in some form or another. I don't think you ever get over grief. I think that you get to a position where you can continue living, hopefully, a life that you're meant to live and to move on and to move past that. But you don't ever forget that, and you don't ever not remember that. You always encounter certain situations where that grief resurrects itself, and that happens a lot when parents lose children. That grief is continual throughout the life. Like, what would that child have been like graduating from grade school? And my child would have been at the age where this year he would have graduated from high school. And then at this age, he probably would have been married, or she would have been married. And I lose out on all those life stages with that person. The same is true with us as adults. I didn't have my grandmother to come to my graduation when I graduated from my master's degree, or when I hit my marriage. I was at my marriage and she wasn't there. So we reach these different life events that are so important to us, and on a physical plane, we don't have those people with us.
Yeah, I noticed that too. When I graduated, the grief sort of hit me afterwards of my father not being there. And I can understand sort of that sentiment. It's like you have these major life moments and then you realize they're not there. And it's about processing those feelings at the same time as processing the achievement of what's just happening. And that can be a very difficult thing because you almost don't want to process it during the moment sometimes. Like I couldn't, I look back, I'm like, there's no way I could have processed my grief as I was defending because I wouldn't be able to defend. So I had to like push it to the side to actually get through. And then I could actually look at that and feel that a little bit more. So yeah, it's grief is a very interesting thing that you said, like it goes on forever and it comes in these weird different moments that sometimes you don't expect. I'm curious, when you're in your Thanatology program, what was one thing that did you learn anything more than you already knew going through your own loss? Like, was there some stuff there that you're like, oh, I never knew that?
Well, I think the thing about thanatology is there's a lot of theories that are really developed in this world today on how to approach grief and how to approach bereavement counseling and how to deal with specific types of grief, such as crisis events, such as a car accident, something that's very sudden, or suicide. And one of the things that I think that it taught me in going through that process was that everybody's grief is very individual and that it's unique to that person. And we cannot say that their grief is unusual or that their grief is incorrect in any ways or has any errors in it, because it's how they experience that person, that individual that they lost, or their dog that they lost, or the house that they lost. And we have to approach that and to really share with them that journey. And sometimes it's enough to just hold their hand and to be present with them and not say a single word.
All right. So have you ever had a dream with any of the people that you've lost so far?
I have not.
Oh, you haven't had a dream with your parents or brother? Okay. I've had a couple of dreams with my grandmother, who passed away quite a long time ago. And she was a very sweet woman, kind of an Emily Post kind of woman, followed everything with the white glove. And they've been very kind and very sweet dreams. So it's been very healing. we have a very large family. My mom has 10 in her family for siblings, my dad 9. So, the kids end up being a number. But by golly, if those grandparents didn't treat each one of us like we were special, and there's over 37 grandchildren on that side. So for her to come back in those dreams is kind of special because she's got 37 grandchildren to go to. And she chose to visit me that night. So that's been very fun. And I do have a different outlook on grief and dying and all that. It's a little bit more accepting because, when you're born, the only thing you're guaranteed is death. So from there, it's an acceptance. And it's kind of a joy to know that their earthly experience is done here and that they've been welcomed back home, to a home on the other side with family members that have been gone. So for me, it's kind of a rejoicing instead of a sadness. It doesn't replace the fact that I miss them, but it does allow me to know that they are very peaceful and happy where they are.
Oh, that's interesting. It's interesting that, you have that belief, and that belief supports sort of your journey here and really what you feel. And I'm glad the dreams are comforting to you as you move forward through that process. Have you ever asked any of the other, grandchildren or anyone else if they've had a dream of your grandmother?
No, I haven't. I should ask them that because I never thought about that. Normally the dreams don't happen when I'm going to be going and visiting them. We live away from the home farm area back in Illinois now, and I don't see them very often. But that's going to be a fun thing to mention the next time that we have a family gathering. I will bring that up because that would be a great topic of conversation.
Well, that's why we started the podcast, to get people talking about it.
There you go.
But yeah, you'll be surprised. I wouldn't doubt it if the majority of people have had one, and what their experiences are and how it made them feel, that varies. And that's the interesting part of it all, and what kinds of dreams they have, because they're probably very different than what you had, because you had a different relationship with her. So your dreams are going to be different with her.
I can believe that to be true because our relationship with them on the earthly plane is different. So sure, I can imagine that it would be different coming from the other side as well.
So have you had any other losses, or was your grandmother the only one so far?
I've lost all of my grandparents. I haven't lost my parents or any siblings. And there really hasn't been a lot of loss in our family that wasn't extended. Cancer that lasted several years, diabetes that lasted several years. So we were capable of mending what needed to be mended before they went. So as far as grief goes for me, we did lose a pet, which was very sad, but a human grief is for me a little bit different in vantage point because I really haven't had a big grief with a dying loved one. So I don't think I have. I think it's been I've had a pretty mild life there.
And that's good. What's interesting, you've only had a dream of your grandmother with all those different losses.
Yeah, I haven't had, my 2 grandfathers and my other grandmother has not come to me in a dream, just the one grandmother.
Or your pet, or your deceased pet hasn't come either.
Right, no. Although I do wonder if he didn't help us pick out the one we have now, so one never knows. That gets a little far out there then.
That's funny. Well, there's that movie. Was it A Dog's Life or something? And it's about the dog reincarnating in other dogs. Yeah. I think they're coming out with a sequel. I just went to the movies the other day, and there's the sequel coming out soon. So, anyways, it's who knows, but it's an interesting concept. But I want to ask you, Tina, if you could have a dream tonight of someone who's died, who would it be, and what would that dream look like to you?
Wow. I would love to have a dream with Brent's mom. She was an amazing woman, very compassionate, but she lived on a life that was very protected because Brent's dad was a little bit harsh sometimes with his words, and he wasn't a truly compassionate man about life. I think he felt that life kind of gave him a short stick, and his mom was just a lovely, compassionate woman, but protected because she didn't want to be looked at as having an attitude towards life that was too loose or too loving or too light. Because I think that Brent's dad was very, harsh on life gives you what you deserve kind of thing. So I think it'd be fun to sit with her and really talk with her about her passion toward life and to see how much love she really was covering up and not allowing to come out.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, and you could probably even get some secrets of Brent's childhood that he hasn't shared.
That would be wonderful. I might understand my oldest daughter a little more.
That's funny. And so where would you want this conversation to take place? Do you want it in a park, in a house, on the moon?
Oh gosh, I think outdoors would be lovely. She loved to fish. She loved to be out by water. So probably a picnic park somewhere would be something that she would be very open to and very invited. So I think she'd feel comfortable there.
Well, that's nice. And last question would be, is it just going to be her and you, or do you want other people also involved in the dream?
I think I'd like to be a little selfish.
Okay.
I think I'd like to have this with her. Yeah, that'd be cool.
All right, beautiful. I think it's a beautiful dream that you want to have. And say, like, at the end of the day, it's very interesting to know what dream would actually provide you a little comfort and a little more understanding on their own personal life. I think that goes to the legacy work that you're doing, is understanding a little bit more about her and about what she truly was inside that maybe you couldn't really get when she was alive because of the constraints. So, I think that's a beautiful dream. So hopefully you have, and if you do have something like that, you got to let us know.
I sure will. Yeah, you'd be the first one to call. Well, Brent first, then you.
That's excellent. All right. So for Brent, what dream would you want to have tonight if you could, of someone who's died?
I would definitely have a dream with my grandmother. I think that, you asked where would it be. It would always have to be at her kitchen table, because she was always preparing meals, always feeding you more than you should have eaten in a week. And I would just love to just spend time with her, even if we didn't talk.
So I can see that. I can see her like making some food. What was one of her favorite dishes that she made you?
She made a goulash that for years I've been trying to find the recipe for, and I swear I cannot find it. Someday I'm going to meet her again and say, did you just make that up, or did you have it in one of these recipe books that I can't find? But it was goulash.
That's funny. That's amazing. It's amazing she was such a great cook. Yeah, food is something that's very we remember that. Those are some of the moments that we don't need to talk, but just the eating of it and being and seeing them is really like the comforting feelings that we need. And so my last question is, what age would you want her to be? Because I know you know her as a grandma, as really old, but she could be any age. So what age do you want her to be?
I would want her at the age that I left her at. So yeah, she would be older, but that's where I left her, and that's where I want to pick up.
All right, that sounds good. Hey, and I've heard, I've seen like people where the grandmother's, is younger. And it's amazing, like when these dreams do happen, what age they come at, or like the images of the person, because that's always an interesting thing. And I remember even like looking at my grandmother, like I would, even my own age, right? Like what age I would want to be. And it's like they almost always need to be older than you, because like even with my dad, when he comes into the dreams, he's always older. And it's going to be interesting as I grow up, like maybe when I go beyond his death date, when he was around 55 when he died, like when I'm 60, will he still be around, like 40, 50, or will he also increase in age as I go? So it'd be interesting to see if, like, as you both of you, as you dream of your deceased, as you guys age, if they become younger, if they become older, just to sort of like make that separation in age because of the identities.
It'll be interesting if I wake up tomorrow morning and I'm in trouble, then I'll know that Tina actually had that dream with my mom.
That's funny. She loves you. Don't worry. You're one of her favorite moments in life. That's funny. All right. So I want to thank you guys both for coming on and sharing all about sort of the conference that you're going to be attending, the work you're doing together, and also about your grief and the dreams that you've had. So, thank you so much for everything that you're doing and helping other people die better, I guess is the best way, or die well. And, and keep letting me know if these dreams do come, because if they do, we'll have you back on the podcast and we can chat some more.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you. And thank you for the work that you're doing, Joshua. I hope to see you again very soon.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome, guys. It was a fun talk. Where can people find your stuff if they need to?
Again, you can find us on heartstringsmemories.com and also on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram.
Same name?
Yes, all under Heartstrings Memories.
Okay.
And then you can call us anytime at 414-630-7321.
Anytime? Is that actually true?
That is actually true.
All right, you might get a call tomorrow at 4 a.m.
We're here.
We're here. That's good. Well, I'm glad. 24/7. You heard it, folks. If you need them, they're there. All right, and to wrap up with our stuff, please check out griefdreams.ca for more information on the topic. We added a donation button, so you can always donate there. There's perks for those who donate. If you have Facebook, you can join the Grief Dreams Facebook group, and you can share your dreams if you've had them or listen to others on there. We're on Twitter and Instagram at Grief Dreams, and there's a children's book called Dream of Owl that I authored that can be found on Amazon. And as we always love to say, with love and gratitude from us to you.
I have questions. I have introduced myself. You have introduced yourself. This is a very good conversation.